In this lesson, we're going to be going over how to find network ranges. So you've got an engagement that you're working on and you only know the domain name and you don't know much beyond that, and you're expected to figure out where everything is and what everything is. So how do you go about doing that? Well, you use some of the tools that we either have been talking about or will soon be talking about in more detail. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the domain name infiniteskills.com, and I'm going to look up Infinite Skills, and I've got an IP address back here. So that's just an IP address. I don't know who that IP address belongs to, and I also don't know how big the network range or network block is that's associated with that. So I'm going to do a whois, and I'm going to look up with Aaron, who owns that IP address. And I can see it's owned by Host My Site, and the network block or network range is 76.12.0.0 all the way through 76.12.255.255. Host My Site, I am going to guess, is a hosting provider. It would be out of scope to look at any of those other addresses unless I can find some evidence that Infinite Skills has a presence on a different address than the one I have located by looking up that particular host name. So I've got one address here that I can look at. Let's take a look at the website, because that may be a different address. www.infiniteskills.com is an alias for infiniteskills.com, which I've already looked up. What I'm seeing here is all the mail that's being handled. If I didn't have that, I could do digmx infiniteskills.com, and I could get back all of the mail handlers. In this case, their mail is being handled by Google. If it weren't being handled by Google, let's say this was a different address, I could do a host here and get the IP address back. Now I've got an IP address, and now I'm going to do a whois again, and it's going to tell me that that's Google. Not particularly surprising. The other thing you can do is to check for different host names. Since I'm assuming DNS probably doesn't allow zone transfers, since most DNS servers don't anymore, although they used to, you may have to start guessing. So I could do something like host webmail.infiniteskills.com. And this is completely guessing, and it may not actually return something. In this case, it doesn't. I could also guess something like vpn.infiniteskills.com. And I've got nothing there. But you could keep going, remote, mail, any other different type of host name that you can think of that may be serving up some additional content. Any host name that you may be able to run across using a Google search. You find the IP address, you figure out who it belongs to, and you just keep going, and you start narrowing down the field of what IP addresses belong to what entities and what IP addresses are relevant to the one that you are working on. The other thing that you can do sometimes is, if I did a whois infiniteskills.com, sometimes what you will get in contact information, you may find that their email address refers to a different domain name, and you can use the same techniques that I've just demonstrated here against that domain name in order to figure out whether it's related to the target that you've been given. And if it is, you start chugging away with finding all of the information that you can about that. So you're going to want to use a lot of DNS information to look for these network ranges. You also are going to need to use the whois databases and the internet registries. A lot of it takes a lot of guesswork and just making inferences. So if you see something that looks like it may be related, start looking it up and chasing down the lead and see where it goes. This can be a time-consuming task, but you want to make sure that you get all of the targets that you can if you haven't been provided them. And again, you always want to make sure that you have the scope clearly in mind and clearly agreed to Even if they don't give you a set of information that they want you to track down, IP addresses or domain names, they should always give you exclusions if they've got any. So that's how you would go about looking for network ranges for particular engagements.